What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Dolphins In Depth podcast. I'm Daniel Oyefusi. That is David Neal. Thanks so much for tuning in. Quick reminder before we start, make sure to subscribe to the Miami Herald YouTube page, like, share, comment, as well as subscribe to the Miami Herald. Now, I'm back from a week out in Indianapolis for the NFL Combine. We had a lot of news to come out of Indy with tons of coaches, general managers, execs, all in one place. We got to speak to Mike McDaniel, Chris Greer. They said a lot about the state of the team. We also got some really big news Monday afternoon, just 1 week ahead of the legal tampering period in the NFL. Big news regarding Christian Wilkins, NFL Network reporting that the Dolphins will not franchise tag the defensive tackle, which will allow him to become a free agent for the first time in his career if the Dolphins and he do not come to terms on a long-term deal ahead of next Wednesday. It looked like things were trending that way. On Sunday, there were a pair of ESPN reports suggesting that there was a likelihood he would not receive the tag. Chris Greer said as much over in Indianapolis when he said all options are still being considered as it pertains to Wilkins. But now we have it more definite. It looks like he will become a free agent. So another top Dolphins player who will be able to field offers next Wednesday. We're going to get into that, preview the free agency period, which starts again just next Monday is when teams can start to legally tamper. But we know they were already talking out in Indianapolis, out in prime over some cocktails and whatnot steak. They were already like down and
In the club.
but we got to start with Wilkins because that's really what's been kind of the top storyline of the Dolphins off season so far. He played the fifth year of his the final year of his rookie deal on the fifth year option. As we all know, last year they weren't able to come to terms on an agreement before the 2023 season. They shelved that. Wilkins went on to have a career year with 9 sacks, and he set himself up for a payday. I said it before, whether it's with the Dolphins, whether it was with another team, he set himself up for a payday. It's looking a lot like it might be with another team at this point. Again, saw this kind of with Emmanuel Agba a couple years back, where he didn't receive a franchise tag. They really the final hour, the final second, right before free agency was about to open, they struck a new deal. So maybe that's a possibility. But again, the Dolphins are in a tough spot with still about $32 million over the cap. They're gonna make some moves over the next week to free some money. But it just seemed like it wasn't. It just wasn't a wise move financially to put the franchise tag on Christian Wilkins. We talked about it before. That would have been about $21 million up on the cap, and that would have made it even tougher for them to retain some of their free agents, let alone add some guys to the roster. But it does look like they're going to lose, or they're at risk of losing what was really like kind of a foundational piece. Like, he was the first pick of 2019 for 2019 draft. Also, kind of the quote unquote tank year before they got Tua in 2020. And he's really done everything right. He's gotten better every single year. But this, I mean, to me, from my vantage point, this is kind of the cost of the cost of two things. One, got to give the Dolphins credit for drafting guys who are worthy of getting these top tier contracts. And they do, Rear mentioned last week, they do have some guys that are coming up, whether it's Javon Holland. Obviously, they're negotiating with Tua right now on a new deal. Jalen Phillips, Jalen Waller. They have a couple guys that are up. They have some young talent whose time is approaching to be paid. And sometimes you can't keep all those guys. But something does kind of come to mind when I think about the situation that the Dolphins are in. And I think about how in recent years they have gone after these high profile players, whether it's Tyreek Hill, whether it's Jalen Ramsey, whether it's Bradley Chubb. And I'm not saying that any of those were bad moves, because all those players have contributed considerably to the Dolphins and were big parts of their success in recent years, especially Tyreek Hill. But I do wonder if that kind of caught up to them. The fact that they were kind of going quote unquote all in. They were giving these big contracts, these top of the market. They're kind of resetting the market with deals for Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and Bradley Chubb. I do wonder if that kind of caught up to them because they were definitely the past couple of years, they were in that all-in approach, that Rams approach, where they were giving away picks. They weren't making a lot of picks, and they were okay with giving out these big contracts. I do wonder if that kind of caught up to them a bit. And now you have a situation where I don't want to say that the reason why they don't or they might potentially not keep Wilkins is because they got a guy like a Ramsey or Bradley Chubb. But it does kind of look like that, when you kind of look at the makeup of the roster right now. What are your thoughts on this latest
Well,
breaking news about
of,
them not franchising
uh,
Wilkins?
well, of course, if you're in any salary cap situation, money going to one place, even if you're talking salary cap over 2 or 3 years, money going to one place is money that can't be spent somewhere else. And at some point, we've seen this in every sport with a salary cap, um, except I think really ironically the NBA, the sport that really kind of started this, the first one with a salary cap. Um, at some point, the bill comes due, and you can't do certain things that you want to do because you made some big moves before, and the big moves have to pay off within a certain time frame, or else, now you got to start moving, kind of resetting everything, and hopefully, not screwing with the foundation of what you built. Uh, we talked about Christian Wilkins a lot last week and talked about that you really don't want to let this guy hit the market because, he's going to hear good money. He's going to hear good money that, the Dolphins can't match. And
Well,
he might.
is it that the Dolphins? I was just thinking. I was thinking about this when I was in Indianapolis. Greer he on multiple occasions he has said that they came close to making a deal, but they couldn't bridge the gap. Now I don't know what the numbers are in terms of bridging the gap or coming just kind of crossing the line there. But I do wonder again, like whatever deal they would have signed, whatever long-term deal they would have signed with Wilkins, the cap hit would have been a fraction of what the franchise tag is. So I do
Correct.
wonder, I do wonder from their perspective, is it that we didn't want to reset the market, or we didn't think that paying him that amount would allow us to keep certain guys down the line? Because if it comes down to if the decision was I don't know how much of a consideration the franchise tag was. I don't think it really was much of a consideration given the
Probably not.
financial state that they're in. But I do wonder, like, if it's a couple $1 million that you're short of, that is the difference between keeping Wilkins in Miami and not. I do wonder, like, especially with the way the salary cap has been rising and whatnot, like maybe like sometimes you do have to overpay. Sometimes you have to
Well,
overpay to keep your
no,
guys.
no, and I think we both said last week you can't but I'm saying you can't let him hit the market, but because somebody's going to overpay, but somebody's going to stupid overpay. There's almost always somebody's going to stupid overpay, and you know the and so you know if somebody does that, if you're Christian Wilkins and you're in a position, yes, he's been really dependable. He's every week he's there, which is a real statement at that position. But you also had the reality that that it's like how long can you leave your chips on that pass line? Sooner or later there's going to be probably an injury, hopefully not a significant injury. But if you're looking at it from his point of view, like if he goes for the money, just goes for the money, who can blame him?
Oh
Who
no,
can blame him?
nobody's blaming.
No.
I'll be
Nobody would blame him if he just went for the money. So guess what? Somebody's probably going to put money out there that. Yeah, you're right. I mean, the Dolphins should, if they're close, suck it up and get it done. If you're that close, suck it up and get it done, because you don't want to let him hit the market, hear other numbers, and then you got to come back and you're going to wind up paying more. Then if you really want to, okay, let's bridge the gap, but that gap's going to be bigger, and now you got to pay more. If you're that close, I think we both said it last week, suck it up, get it done for what he means to the team. You just can't let him hit
especially.
free agency.
I would also
You
say,
can't let him hit the offers.
I would also say, especially given where they are as a team, like we kept on saying they're all in. Like they went out and they made Tyreek Hill the highest paid wide receiver. I'm looking at the numbers. They made Jalen Ramsey just about the highest paid. Right now he's third in average annual value. They made Bradley Chubb a top 5 outside linebacker pass rusher. I don't know if I would have let Christian Wilkins reset the market, compared to some of his peers. But given what he's meant to the team, the fact that he's improved every year, and the fact that they are in win now mode. They moves that they made are not of a team that's kind of slowly and surely
Right.
moving.
Right.
I would have bit the bullet, or so to speak, and done that. And obviously, they know more about structuring contracts more than me. But it would suck if it comes out afterward, if he leaves and it comes out that it was like, a couple $1,000,000 here, there, and but I understand that it's the business. And if again, I'm just kind of looking at it from their perspective. Maybe they think that, it's the difference between keeping a guy like Wilkins and maybe keeping Javon Holland, or keeping Jalen Phillips, and Jalen Waddle, and all those are, on paper, those are more impactful positions, more kind of premium positions. But it's unfortunate because, again, he is a guy that's done everything right. He's an NFL peer,
Yeah.
he's a captain, he's a fan favorite. And it looks like, again, like, you never say never, but when guys hit the market, I wrote about it, in my takeaways. Like, the Dolphins have not been in this position the past couple of years. They've been in a position where they've been atop the league in cap space, and
Right.
they've been able to outbid teams. They're not going to be able to do that this year. Like, I don't care what anybody says. They're gonna have some money to work with, but they're not gonna have a bunch of money to just flaunt around and throw around and outbid and overpay for guys. They're just not going to be able to do that. And that's why, I keep on saying, and it's what I've said about the defense specifically, and the team as a whole. My worry is that they're going to lose some guys. I mean, they have some, we're going to talk about it in the second half, but they have some key free agents who I don't think they're in a position to get in a bidding war over. And I don't think they want to get in a bidding war over them. So it is tough. Obviously, we'll see what happens within the next week. We'll see what happens when free agency officially opens next Wednesday. But as for now, it's trending and looking like Christian Wilkins is going to be a free agent.
Yeah. And, you know, that's not good for the Dolphins. I think you say some of those positions are more impactful. I think they're more visually impactful. I think in he's just a big part of the defense in so many different ways, and a big part of the team in a number of different ways. And yeah, it's I I understand. Javon Holland's a hell of a player. I understand Jalen Phillips. I I think it's easier. Honestly, I think it's easier to find another one of either one of those guys than it is to find another Christian Wilkins. And
That's
uh,
fair.
and I think this is if he gets away from the Dolphins, it's obviously could be wrong, but it feels like one of those things that a few years down the road they're going to be sitting there going, yeah, what we could really use right now. We could really use a guy like Christian Wilkins, or yeah, if we still had Christian Wilkins, but we don't. So and then it's going to be one of those midweek sighs from among the coaches and the players, and it's going, yeah, and yeah, it's,
Yeah, a lot of teams could use a Christian Wilkins. I'm sure he'll have a very robust market. If he does end up hitting the market next week, again, NFL Network reporting that Christian Wilkins will not receive the franchise tag from the Dolphins, which would allow him to hit free agency for the first time in his career. So we'll see what happens, and obviously have the latest updates. I'll have an initial story on the Miami Herald website, and we'll have any other further developments. All right, we're going to take a short break, but when we come back on the other side of things, free agency is quickly approaching. The Dolphins are going to be very busy in the next week. They're going to be very busy over the next couple weeks as they free up some cap space, try to retain some free agents, and try to add some free agents. We're going to look ahead, kind of give you a primer of what to expect, and give our predictions for what we think the Dolphins will do. So stay locked with us. We'll be back soon. What's going on, everybody? Still here on the Dolphins In Depth podcast with David Neal, talking all things Dolphins. Now, the first half, we broke down the breaking news regarding Christian Wilkins and the Dolphins not planning to franchise tag him, which will allow him to be a free agent next week. And that leads into our bigger conversation regarding free agency. Again, next Monday is the start of the quote-unquote legal tampering period, where prospective free agents can start to have discussions with other teams on Wednesday, those deals can be finalized. So the clock is ticking to the Dolphins to maybe resign some guys. Obviously, they're gonna have to free up some cap space. They're gonna have to become cap compliant before the start of the new league year. They're currently about $30 to $32 million over the cap. That is after releasing Emmanuel Ogbah a couple weeks back. They released Xavier Howard, but if you don't remember, that is a post June 1 cut, so that won't count against the cap, or that won't free up some money on the cap until June 2nd. So we're gonna get some restructured contracts. I suspect maybe Tyreek Hill, Jalen Ramsey, some of those guys with some big salaries. They're going to have some contract restructures to free up some cap space in the immediate future. We might get some cuts. There's a couple guys who could give the Dolphins some cap relief. But the Dolphins have a lot of work ahead of themselves. We talked about Christian Wilkins. He's probably the top name of a very talented group of Dolphins free agents. We talked about this past week, talked about Robert Hunt and Connor Williams. It looks like both of those guys are definitely going to hit free agency. Chris Greer said that Robert Hunt, they had discussions with him last year during last season about a contract extension. And in Greer's words, he said that they respected his desire to become a free agent. On Connor Williams, as we said before, it looks like he's going to take some time to make a decision in free agency as he rehabs his ACL. Chris Greer said that they're going to give him space and time to do that. So really, you have like the Dolphins' top 3 free agents in my eyes are about to hit free agency. You got some other key free agents: Andrew Van Ginkel, Isaiah Wynn, Deshaun Elliott, some key starters who are going to become free agents. You don't have a lot of money. I guess I won't say predictions of what the Dolphins will do, but if you are the Dolphins, how do you approach this free agency period? Because it's not like the past couple of years. Like, I don't think you're gonna get a rabbit out of your hat and get Jalen Ramsey for a third round pick. I'm not sure if Chris Greer's got that magic, that juju this time. But if you're the Dolphins, how do you approach this offseason?
Uh, oof. I honestly, you kind of have to, just make a list of make your priority list and go down it and say, okay, look, this is what you know, and have a line in your priority list of, okay, these are the guys we're going to have to let go, and we're going to have to fill these spots, with other folks or in the draft. You know, you don't want to have a completely young offensive line, but
Yeah, I mean, he said they're gonna have to add some guys. I mean, Chris Greer said
yeah,
it's possible they gotta. I mean, they're still waiting on Teron Armstead. I know our own Barry Jackson has reported that the expectation is that Armstead's gonna return. But we spoke to Mike McDaniel. He said that he's still giving them time to make a decision. Chris Greer said that a decision is expected, or they'll talk before free agency where he'll communicate his plans. But as of now, you have 3 starting free agents that are set to offensive linemen that are set to hit free agency. So that's definitely got to be a priority somewhere or another, whether it's the draft
yeah,
agency.
yeah. I mean, you know, si- sign one, maybe two. You're not gonna be able to sign all 3.
Well,
And
it's interesting you bring that up. One of the, I guess, when ESPN just on Sunday mentioned that, the expectation and a lot of teams are bracing for Wilkins to not get the tag. There was kind of a footnote that some people, like, if you read the entire story, at the bottom there was a little very interesting Dolphins related nugget that I don't think a lot of people picked up on. I mean, it was talking about the guard market and how not Wilkins, but Rob Hunt and some of these top free agent guards available, they could get about 14, 15, 16 million dollars. And that's kind of like tackle money, truthfully. So
yeah,
that's another guy who I don't know if the Dolphins are going to be in a position to kind of, bid for his services, so to speak.
right. So, I mean, I was saying try to sign 2. You're not gonna be able to get 3. Be nice you got 2. I just make your list of priorities and knock out at least one. And that's another reason why, if you're close on Wilkins at all, if you're close, bite the bullet. Suck it up. Get resign him, and then start to look elsewhere. But as important as the lines are, you're not going to be able to, you know, do it all. So make your priorities and try to knock them out. And if your number one priority, if you absolutely can't resign your number one priority, then move on to number two. And, uh, you know, do what you can before Wednesday. Because once everybody starts to hear,
I would say before, I would say definitely before Monday, because again, like
yeah,
we talk about the legal tampering period, like
yeah,
a lot
but
of these
we
deals,
know, yeah,
a lot of
come
these
on
deals are
now,
kind of under the table, already worked
right,
out. So Monday,
right,
like 12 p.m. hits, and you got Schefter, you got Rappaport, you got all these news
yeah,
breakers
yeah,
saying that
right,
the intention is for them to sign a
right,
3-year deal.
yeah,
Like, all right, like this deal has already
exactly,
been agreed to, honestly. It's just
right,
just for the sake of
exactly.
semantics. So I would say even before Monday.
But yeah, no, yeah, just get it done, now, and get it done as soon as possible. It's not. I mean, I don't think there's any great genius that can conjure, uh, you know, more money, in this situation. This is, you know, it's like a monopoly. You can't always buy that last property when you land on it, but when you want, sometimes you land on Park Place, you got to let it go. You know, hope you can get it sometime around, because maybe you got to save your money better spent elsewhere, but you can't. They can't do everything. They just can't. So
Yeah, I mean they're gonna lose some guys. It seems like it's just kind of a matter of who and how many guys they lose. It feels like a little bit of a mini reset. And I guess if I were Chris Greer and how I think they might approach this offseason, just knowing that you don't have a lot of cap space, you are working on a deal with your starting quarterback that is going to be a top of the market deal. Whether it resets the market, we don't know yet, but it's going to be a top of the market deal. And there's going to be significant cap hits in the years to come. And the fact that you have some guys coming up, I would treat this like a mini reset. Um, so Wilkins, like my guess is that they lose Wilkins and Hunt. I think that those are two young guys in their prime who are gonna get big deals that the Dolphins aren't in a position to match. My guess is that they lose those guys. Um, but I think for the first time in a couple of years, or really maybe ever since Greer has been around, and especially under Stephen Ross as owner, they're going to play like the compensatory pick game. So, you lose a free agent, but you get a draft pick the following year based off what type of deal that they sign. The bigger the deal, the greater the pick you get. The highest pick you can get is a third round pick. The Dolphins typically haven't been in that position. I mean, since I've been on the beat, they haven't had any comp picks. I know they haven't gotten any in recent years because they're usually spending so much money. So when you lose a free agent, the comp pick that you're slotted to get, it cancels out if you sign a guy to a similar deal. But the Dolphins aren't in that position. I think they're going to lose some guys, and I don't think they're going to be giving out a ton of big contracts. Maybe you see one, once they free up some money, maybe they splurge on, a replacement for Wilkins, or maybe they try to get a cornerback to replace Xavier Howard, who I don't believe is coming back, though Chris Greer left the door open. But it seems like they do kind of play like the future game, where they're okay. Well, I guess they lose these guys, but they know if they're gonna get a pick back, and they're really settled into that second tier market. So I don't think they're gonna go big fish hunting like we've seen in recent years. Maybe they get some older vets on 1-2 year deals who are a little bit older, maybe not as good as the guys that are leaving, but you get a fraction of that, or maybe like 75% of that production, at much less of the price. It's going to be interesting to see who they keep. I think there's a couple guys who I think their markets just aren't going to be, suitable. They're not going to fit into the Dolphins' plan. So even I look like a guy like Andrew Van Ginkel, and I wonder how much money he's going to get. They got him for a steal last year. Like they got him
right,
at $2.6 million last year, and then he goes and has 6 sacks. I think he's going to have a legitimate market to be a starter and get like his first real payday. And again, we talk about loyalty and guys who have grown up in the organization and whatnot, but it's going to be hard. I think it's going to be hard for some of these guys to turn down what might be one of their few real paydays. Like obviously the no state income tax is great and everything. But I think it's going to be tough when you put it side by side to keep some of these guys. So I think that we're going to see a very measured approach. I think the first couple of days of free agency might be a little bit tough for Dolphins fans because you're going to see,
Definitely,
I think you're going to see a lot
definitely.
of names coming off the board. Former Dolphins, signs with so and so. I think we're going to see a lot of that, and I don't know if the Dolphins are going to be, quick to make moves, or the moves that they do make. I don't know if they're going to be like the big names that maybe you'd like to see to compensate for these losses. But Greer said it himself. He said, "Hey, um, you can't, make these big moves that we made." And it was kind of in the context of the Tua contract. And I don't like people blaming this on Tua because I don't think that Tua is the reason why they might lose Wilkins or miss or lose. I don't think that's necessarily the truth. But in talking about Tua's pending contract extension, Greer said like, "Hey, like we can't make the moves that we've made over the past couple of years. Like, that's not a sustainable approach every year to give up multiple draft picks and significant cap space to acquire these big names. Like at some point, he said you have to have that influx of draft capital. You have to have some young guy. Well, he said some young players, and when he says young players, I'm assuming he's talking about the draft. So I look at it as like this is going to be a full offseason for the Dolphins, but I don't think they're going to make a ton of moves early on. They're going to get a lot of money June 2nd when the Xavier Howard cut really kicks in. So I think we might see them, get some vets. There's always some vets, some 30-year-old, some late 20-year-old guys who, don't get the market, don't get the deal that they want. They stick on them on the street for a little bit, and then they get signed closer to training camp. I think we could see maybe a couple signings then. I think the draft is going to be huge because again, they're going to lose some guys, and they're going to have to get some young cheap guys on rookie deals to come in and contribute at a similar level. So hey, just kind of warning Dolphins fans, bracing them. The first couple of
Yeah.
days might be tough. I know how Dolphins Twitter is, but just process through. And hey, the games don't start till September, early September. Give it time, but I think it could be a tough couple of days at the start of the new league year for the Dolphins. But again, um,
And
big picture, I was thinking like it's tough because I kept on thinking that we talked about the window for the team. 1, 2, 3 years. I always thought that it was a 1 year window. I thought 2023 was the year where they have to win it, or else you're gonna have to come pay the price of some of these moves. And I think that we're gonna see it next week. It's unfortunate that they weren't able to get more out of that team. I thought that was a very, very talented team, and it looks like they're gonna lose some of those guys in the coming week or so.
well, yeah, I mean that's the Bradley Chubb trade and the Jalen Ramsey deal both screamed that this is, this is it. And especially if you saw, the financials going into this year. Yeah, it was 2023 was, you know, I don't know if the window's shut, but that was the time the window was most wide open for them to dive,
Yeah.
to dive through the window. And, you know, unfortunately for them, things, some things close that window a little bit, and
Yeah, I
they,
mean, windows close very quickly.
quickly, and yeah, and they weren't like diving through that thing like Starsky and Hutch. So, you know, it not. I don't think it's closed, but the Dolphins roster last year, if you looked up and down that roster, there are a whole lot of franchises that would have taken that roster and would have said, "Oh yeah, yeah, sure, we can do something with this." And then, it just never quite came together. Uh, I think in some ways it's not blaming everything on blaming like Vic Fangio or anything. I think it's a little shame that during that time they did have a defensive coordinator who kind of felt like it did, a bad fit and maybe didn't want to be there. They couldn't get, Jalen Ramsey gets hurt out of, early in
Second day
training
of
camp. Yeah,
non-contact, second day of training camp. Yeah.
that was kind of that in some ways I thought set the tone for the season. That it kind of told you this might be one of those what could have been seasons, and that's kind of what it wound up being. And so now you can, but another thing you see 1,000 times in sports is, do you think it's going to be the year? Sometimes it's not. Things happen, injuries happen, you get upset, whatever, and then you come back next year and it's like, okay, yeah, well, and this last now nobody will be as good as we were last year, and blah blah blah, and then then that winds up being the year, or maybe 2 years later winds up being, whoa, the year it all comes together, it all falls together. So the Dolphins fans, might want to, hold that in their heart, in their thoughts. But yeah, it's good. It's not going to be pleasant free agency, and but it does. I think it really does mean the draft gets very, very interesting, and some of the I guess then it gets into some of the conversations at the combine. I'm sure we're interesting for you to hear what some of the guys thought. Personally, as far as what the little underwear Olympics out there, I never get too excited about, because the guys who run really fast. There's a great video on there, but then the NFL Throwback YouTube channel, which us old people love, but they did a great video of like the 10 or 12 fastest guys in combine history and what happened to them. Some of them had solid careers, some of them had very good careers, and some of them is barely, almost didn't play. Played a few games, played a year. So all the running, the jumping, and everything, that's great. I'm a person who the combine, the best value in the combine is the talking to the people there. I think for us is the talking to folks there, seeing what's on everybody's mind, seeing what kind of meetings everybody had. Whatever you do there in Indianapolis does not change what you put on tape in your college career, and that's what that's what the smart people pick on. So.
Yeah, the draft is going to be very big for the Dolphins. Again, they have the first round pick, and it looks like unless they trade it, unless they which they've been known to do the past couple of years, unless they trade that, they're going to pick 21st overall. They're going to have a second round pick. Not going to have a third round pick because of tampering a couple of years back with Brady and Sean Payton. But again, they're going to have to make very good use of those picks, regardless of whether, even if they do, somehow miraculously keep some of these guys. I mean, they do have to get some young talent in there to kind of augment some of these veteran guys on big contracts who may be, coming up, kind of declining at some point. So again, we're gonna have a very, very busy week next week. I think we're gonna have some developments this over the next couple of days in terms of contract restructures and cap saving moves. So definitely stay loud to the Miami Herald. This time next week when we start recording, I think we're probably already gonna have some moves or whatnot. So we'll probably be able to discuss the early developments from the legal tampering period. So that should be fun as well. But that brings us to the end of another edition of the Dolphins In Depth podcast. I want to thank you guys as always for tuning in. Reminder to subscribe to the Miami Herald YouTube page, like, share, comment, as well as subscribe to the Miami Herald. You definitely want to subscribe to the Miami Herald.
Yep.
Harry and I are going to be locked into our laptops, locked into our phones, as we give you your latest Dolphins.
Mary's always locked into his laptop and his phone.
Always, but more so than
his
usual.
laptop.
More so
Yeah.
than usual. So you definitely want to stay locked to the Miami Herald for your latest Dolphins updates. We'll be back next week to recap and talk some more Dolphins football. But until then, you guys take care. See ya.
Bye, y'all.